of the Year for Time Magazine 2 years ago. That's kind of where we are. It's part of our culture now. And this is interesting. So we have a new technology. We're doing lots of genetic testing. We've adapted the system of counseling people about what to do with this information. You can actually now you can call up a genetic counselor in Florida from anywhere. This is kind of like your technical support for your computer, except now it's technical support for your interpreting your genome. And it's actually covered by, if you're covered by Aetna health insurance, they'll pay for it. So this is a different world. So now I'm going to enter that world. And I'm going to enter it in two respects. One is a technical respect. So this is a series of stories that happened in the middle to late 2007. In late May of 2007, this event up here that this is a picture of, again, we see Jim Watson at an event that took place in Houston that day. This is Richard Gibbs. He's the head of the Genome Sequencing Center, standing right next to Jim Watson. And then this poor woman in the middle, she's the only woman in the picture, you'll notice. This is poor Amy McGuire, who got to be the bioethicist who was supposed to figure out what to do with this information. The event is Jim Watson was given a hard disk with his full genomic sequence on it. That was done by a new technology that I'll be talking about in a minute. And within a few months after that, his genome was posted on the internet. So you can actually get James D. Watson's DNA sequence, except for the part that bears on chromosome 19 risk for Alzheimer's disease, the apolipoprotein E, which actually you can piece together if you need to, because you can figure it out, and several people have. But it's not in the original sequence that's been posted. And within a few months after that, this guy, does anybody recognize this guy in yellow? Right, it's an incredibly good picture. This is on the front cover of his book. This is Craig Venter. Turns out that Craig Venter, I haven't gone through the story of the sequencing the human genome, but this is Craig Venter, who was involved in the startup company Celera. May of 1998, it was formed to basically become competition with the publicly funded Human Genome Project to create a different reference genome of the human being. They worked on 5 or 6 genomes. I think it was 6 people were sequenced originally, but the one that they got furthest to completion was actually his. This was disclosed after the fact. And then they did that at a much higher level of resolution, and they released that sequence in this article that was published in PLOS Biology in October of 2007. So his was actually the first formally published complete human genome. So both of these genomes are now, as of October, as of sometime around December or something like that, 2007. So 2008 started the era where we had individual people's genomes posted on the internet. So before the dust had even dried, or before the ink had even dried on those events, we have an amazing array of, cascading array of commercial developments. Public announcements that kind of drove each other in the late parts, the last 2 months of 2007. On November 6th of 2007, Navigenics announced that it was going to start allowing people to scan their genome for $2,500. It's a company started by, this is a complex slide, I apologize for it. What I've got here is the founders of the 2 companies, and importantly, who paid for the companies to be founded. One of those of you who do biotech or information technologies are going to recognize this name. Kleiner Perkins is the foremost firm for venture capital in Silicon Valley. You go to Sand Hill Row, it's the richest place. John Doerr is incredibly famous in information technology. This is the company, this is the VC firm that gave rise to Genentech. Gave rise to any number of the startups whose chips are in here. in this computer. So it's a very high prestige venture capital firm. They don't allow things to fail. And they basically are using a technology that has been developed out of the Human Genome Project and out of this, what I talked about before. You take these human variations, you put them on a chip, and that's what you use. One of the ways of making those chips is a company called Affymetrix, which is from Silicon Valley, grew out of work that was going on at Stanford. That's the technology that Navigenics is using. About 2 weeks later, rival company, Silicon Valley, 23andMe, their money comes from the young woman down here is Anne Wojcicki, and this is Linda Avey over here. Anne Wojcicki is now married to Sergey Brin. Sergey Brin is a household word in information technology. He's one of the co-founders of Google. So this is Google money that gave rise to 23andMe. And Google is also the spiritual bedrock of 23andMe. This is a company that's all about give me information to information, give me access to information about me. So 23andMe, 23, why 23? Because half of your human chromosomes, there are 46 chromosomes. Divide those in half, you've got 2 copies of each. That's 23, it's close enough in women that's actually true. You get chromosomes 1 through 22 and then 2 copies of X. For guys, 23andMe is a little bit off, but that's okay. It's started by 2 women, so. That wasn't the end of the story. Between these 2 announcements, I apologize for the colors here, we have the creation of a new company, or actually not the creation of a new company, we have the morphing and creation of a new service in an existing company that's based in Iceland. This is Kari Stephenson, a kind of a very tall, brusque Icelander who had started this company Decode in Iceland and had been doing lots of studies of human genetic variation that started primarily by looking at Icelandic populations, although not restricted to that. But they've gotten really good. They've spent a lot of money building the high-tech laboratory capacity to do lots of fast studies in human beings. They saw these announcements happening by these other companies and they said, you know, we've got the technology to do the same thing. Let's just offer this as a service. So they announced that for a mere $985, you can scan over 1 million variants using the technology that they use. And then at about the same time, all of these happened in November of 2007. George Church, the guy who you see here, the guy who looks kind of like a logger, that's George Church, who's at Harvard, announced the creation of a company that would sequence your entire genome for a mere $350,000. And they actually got some people as takers of that. Their price is now down, I think, to $199. One other picture on this slide is there's a very famous project that's going on. 10 people have basically volunteered to participate with George. This is not out of his company. This is out of Harvard, to have a lot of information from their genomes created, a lot of stuff about them created, and a lot of information about themselves, their private information, their pictures, their height, all sorts of data that will be posted on the internet for everybody to look at. They're called the PGP-10. This stands for Personal Genome Project. There are 10 of them. They were selected. The informed consent agreement at Harvard was that they all had to have at least a master's degree in genetics. Why? Because they wanted to select people who would know what the risks were of having their genetic information on the internet. One of these is a collaborator of mine. The guy in the green shirt in the back here is Misha Angrist. He's writing a book about this experience. It's an incredibly interesting motley crew of people. You've got